What if I told you there was a movie that came out in 2021 which was a follow up of the 1999's Matrix? Would you believe it's true? What would be your reaction? How would you take it? What would be your own emotions? Would it be anger? Would it be happiness? What do you think about this new Matrix? Do you believe it's real or a dream? Actually, it's just real, but would you believe it is a dream come true or a nightmare that just begun? This is my reaction to the Matrix Resurrections. Hello everyone, my name is Enrique and I'm your reviewer. And let me tell you something about the Matrix movies. It's one of those movies that I actually enjoy as a kid because it was more than just an action movie from people who wanted to shoot guns and be badass and do karate. It had more than that. Believe it or not, The Matrix was also a smart movie which it talked about philosophical things like the dream and the world and the realities. Like, if you dream, is it real or is it just a dream? And if it is a dream, what would be your reality? How will you take this new reality? Would you fight it or would you accept it? Those kind of questions came up in the 1999 Matrix movies. It was one of those movies that also introduced me to Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Hugo Weaving. It definitely had an impact on a lot of people. It was like a anime movie brought to the big screen, doing a lot of cool stuff. Gun motions, gun time, bullet time, action sequences that had a lot of kung fu. It had groundbreaking technology, groundbreaking effects. It was a huge success. And needless to say, it spawned two sequels. The two of those sequels, while controversial among fans, they were still received well by the general audience. And a lot of people thought that after a trilogy, there was no more Matrix movies. And the people thought that the ending was fitting. After all, Neo saved the world, he made peace with the machines, and everybody was happy. There was no need for another sequel explaining what happens. But in reality, in many respects, people had curiosity what happened after the Matrix and what happened after Neo saved the world. Will the world be safe or will it be worse? And that's what we got this year, or at least in 2021, with the release of the Matrix Resurrections. This time held by the direction of Lana Wachowski. And even though in the past it used to be the collaboration from both the Wachowski brothers, well, actually sisters now it's just one Wachowski. And the question is, would it be good or bad? And honestly, it left a polarizing effect among the fans and the public. For starters, it didn't just stream in theaters, it streamed on HBO Max. And after that, when the people start seeing it, they were left with a lot of questions and a lot of, let's say, mixed emotions. Because a lot of people didn't know how to take this new Matrix movie. And that's what I'm here for. Give my own opinions about what the movie was doing and the choices and stories and characters they decided to go through. So, without further ado, let's go to the plot. You know, now that I think about it, the plot of this movie is a little bit complicated. You see, after the war with the machines and the humans, Neo is now in the Matrix, still living a life of normalcy. He's still a video game designer, he has a normal life, but he still feels like he's drawn to the Matrix somehow. Like, he feels his reality is not his reality. And despite going to therapy, he realizes that he's in the Matrix again. And when he's set free, well, it's hard to say actually. But now that Neo is free, now he has to find a way to free Trinity, Yes, Trinity is alive in this movie. And now they have to find out what to do with the Matrix, which is different actually. It's not like war against the machines now, it's more about freeing themselves from the program, yet they want to stay in the program. That's one of the problems that I have with this movie. It's trying to repeat a lot of stuff and saying that it's basically what the programs are doing, the deja vu program, and they're repeating a lot of stuff, to make a commentary about nostalgia and about repeating a lot of stuff with reboots and remakes and trying to do differently. But in this case, it's confusing for the fans because one of the things that the Matrix did in the 1990s, it was to show us philosophical talks about what is reality and what is the meaning of it, and what do you feel after you dream, and what do you do with your reality, and what do humans have as a choice. This movie is more about a commentary about how do you reboot a movie, which is not a bad idea from a certain point of view. But when you put it in a movie and when you do it in the way you did it as an execution, it creates like this hollow feeling that you have about not being able to do anything that has a meaning. It's kind of like what Smith says, that without purpose, we wouldn't exist. Now, obviously, purpose has different meanings, but in this case, it doesn't feel like this movie has a purpose, not at least a defining goal one. And that's, I think, one of the problems. The second problem with the plot in this case is the meta humor. Yes, this movie opens up with a lot of meta commentary about the Matrix. Basically defining its existence, what it was all meaning about. Hell, there is a scene in which a group of characters are discussing about what the Matrix means. And that is something that will piss a lot of fans off, because people don't want to see, they are wrong, this is not what the Matrix is all about, it should be open to interpretation, blah, 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 blah. And that's something that hurt this movie a lot, because it has a lot of meta commentary, and when it goes meta, it goes too much in my opinion. Unlike Deadpool that uses it as a joke, but in this case it's more about being serious and to discuss what is the meaning to reboot the Matrix, which is probably something that a lot of people didn't want to see. And when I saw it, I thought, okay, this is different. But on the other hand, when they start doing a lot of stuff that are going around places in order to free Trinity, because that's the main goal here, it kind of, I don't know, it kind of left me hollow, if I make myself clear. I don't think this movie had a clear goal or an end game for if they want to make future movies, but I feel like there's one of Wachowski saying, okay, I'm making another Matrix movie, but in this case I'm going to do a lot of meta stuff and commentary, which is something that, I don't know, I don't think anyone wanted to see, and that's something that we didn't want to see, especially from a franchise that brought a lot of people's attention. And that's a huge problem. But now that we got the plot and the problems out of the way, let's talk about the characters. Okay, so there are characters in this movie that are either new and old. Now let's start with the ones that we already know, like Neo and Trini, who are played by Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss. I will be honest, when they came back to this franchise, I didn't know how to take it. After all, they pretty much ended on a good note. But in this case, when they brought them back, I just wonder with myself how they will be back. After all, they died. And that's something that the movie tries to explain because they brought them back and put them on the Matrix again in order to give them normal lives, which is kind of weird. But when we get to that, to the motivation of another villain of this movie. Needless to say, Neo's trying to figure out his own existence, and while I actually appreciate a lot of more emotions from Keanu Reeves in this movie, I feel like he didn't have like an end goal, like his own motivation, other than Trini. But we also saw that he has a selfless side, and he wanted to be free as well. But since he's repeating a lot of stuff, we don't know how to take it. I'll say this: Keanu Reeves in this movie, it has more emotions than the last ones. I mean, in Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions, he felt like he was holding himself. But now that he has his second comeback and he has made an explosion with his John Wick films, I feel like in this case, I feel like he's showing a little bit more of emotion and having a lot of fun with the fact that he wanted Neo to be a little bit more fun. So I appreciate that from Keanu, and I'm glad that he's back. I mean, without him, there will be no Matrix. As far as Carrie-Anne Moss goes, even though she doesn't do a lot in this film, in fact, she kind of plays it normal as well as like kind of like a damsel in distress in this film. I still like that she's back as well, and even though she's just a motivation for Neo to come after her, I'm still glad that she's back doing a lot of kick-ass stuff. At least at the end, she doesn't do much in the movie aside from the third act. But in spite of that, I don't know. I'm just glad to see her. Now let's get to the controversial part that I feel that a lot of people will have a problem. You see, in this movie, they recasted two of the most important characters in the Matrix, Morpheus and Mr. Smith, Agent Smith in this case. In this case, Morpheus is played by Yahya Abdul Matem, if I'm not mistaken his name correctly. I'm going to call him Yahya Abdul II, and he plays a different version of Morpheus. You see, he's not the real Morpheus, not even his son. In fact, he's a program. Now, there's something that this movie does well. And that's something that they brought an idea that I actually like. The idea of the machines and the humans working together. And this Morpheus is actually a program that works with the humans and good machines. Now that is actually a good idea. What is all bringing to in the Matrix Revolutions? The machines are no longer have hate for humans, so there's no need for hating or fighting again and fighting the humans. So when this Morpheus is set free, he wants to help Neo. But here's the thing: when you recast someone as important and famous as Morpheus, who's played by the great Lawrence Fishburne, you have to realize you're not playing the same character. And he's trying to do a lot of things that Morpheus did, but trying to give it his own spin. But a lot of people will find it confusing because Morpheus, as far as I know, we don't know his ultimate fate. All I know is that he got his wish of free humanity. But we don't know exactly what happened afterwards. And when you recast someone as Morpheus, or at least make this character the new Morpheus, it will bring a lot of controversial thoughts. And then we got Agent Smith, who's played by Jonathan Groff. Now, recall, Agent Smith died in the third movie. He exploded, as well as his other copies. After all, he couldn't take what Neo did, which was pretty much like the equivalent of a Messiah overload or something. But the case is, Smith died. And now he's being reborn again in a different body as a video game CEO. And somehow he remembers Neo and somehow tries to kill him. But why would they bring Smith back in a different role? And for that matter, Why give him a new body? Why don't you just, erase his memory? I figured this was the case that Hugo Weaving couldn't make the schedule and probably thought that he was not going to participate. I don't know. But I can tell you this. When you recast the Agent Smith character, and when you use it just to be a wild card, so to speak, it pisses a lot of people off. And after all, Agent Smith tried to take over the Matrix, and it was something that even the machines couldn't control. So why would the machines bring back some program that tried to take over them and put him in a different body? I'll say this. I have nothing against Jonathan Groff as this version of Smith. He does have a lot of fun. It's just that, I don't know, it doesn't feel the same without Hugo Weaving, if I make myself clear. Other characters that I consider new in this case, it will be Bugs, who is played by Jessica Henwick. In my opinion, I like Jessica Henwick. She was my favorite character in the Iron Fist as Colleen. And I like that she's in this movie too. But other than just trying to set herself free as well as setting Neo free, I don't know what her main goal is here. And while she's trying to save Neo and Trinity from the Matrix, we don't know what's her own motivations or if there is a larger goal they have in mind. But I still like that she's in this movie and she kicks a lot of ass and has a lot of chemistry with Yahya Abdul as well as Keanu Reeves, so I appreciate that. She's a good actress in my opinion. And let's get to the part that it makes me confused to the character that I feel a lot of mixed bags, a lot of mixed opinions in my opinion. And that is Neil Patrick Harris as the analyst or the therapist of Neo. Now, let me get something clear. I love Neil Patrick Harris. He's one of my favorite actors, comedians, as well as Broadway actors of all time. He was my favorite actor who voiced Spider-Man in the video games as well as the animated series from MTV. But in this movie, when he's playing the villain, it's not sure why they brought Neo and Trini back. Apparently, he wants to use the emotions of Neo and Trinity to manipulate people and keep them on the Matrix. Okay, that's in essence something good. You can manipulate people by staying in the Matrix, by making it what it is, more colorful, more fun, more like, I don't know, like a real world, more fun, more alive, more things. But in this case, I feel like he's playing masochistic in this case because, I don't know, he tries to control two people who have defined the odds as well as the machines and programs for years. So why would bringing Neo and Trini together and somehow thinking that they can control them will go well? Because it doesn't go well. And in this case, he just, despite trying to control everything, and while I admit that Neil Patrick Harris as the villain is hilarious and badass, I feel like his motivation as well as his reasons kind of play dumb in this case, because if you have two people who define the odds against the machines before, by putting them in the Matrix just runs the risk of them breaking out again and starting a war. And that's something that the machines don't want anymore. So what was his end game? I'm not sure. Either way, this movie has a lot of characters. They bring back the French guy who was hilarious, and he is back as a bump. So I will admit, it is ironically funny because he went from a business classy man to a bum with a beard. Okay, I'll admit that was one of my favorite parts of this movie. Now, the production design and effects in this movie, while good, they don't bring something new. Now, the Matrix, as all of you know, had a green filter. It makes you feel like you're in a computer world. You see the buildings that were endless. You see a lot of people. You see a lot of sophistication, if I make myself correctly. There was a world that was all about business. It had like a business city world that you barely see any trees or forests or anything like that, or any kind of lightning that wasn't, green. Now, this brings back to the end of the film because Sati, who by the way is recast as a Priya Chopra, if I remember her name well, she makes the sun in the Matrix for Neo, of course, and the world is more colorful, so there is a connection to that ending. But after that, you don't see I don't know, you don't see the environment that yes is comfortable, but you don't know if it's real, or you don't feel that sensation of urgency or being trapped in the Matrix. So while I admit that the production design for both the Matrix and the real world are still as stunning as hell, they still capture the imagination that the original films had. It doesn't seem to have something new other than the design for the machines that they are now good. I appreciate that, but it's nothing new or nothing that we haven't seen before in a million other movies that we haven't seen. And now the effects. While I like the effects in the Matrix movies, I will admit that in this one, it doesn't seem, like I said, new. What is the things that you remember from this movie? From the original Matrix? The bullet times, the gun battles, the kung fu, everything that had a great action sequence, even the bullets, the Neo stopping the bullets was something good. But again, in this movie, they tend to repeat a lot of those stuff, but not make how can I say this? They don't seem to bring something new or something different. Offer an alternative or something like a new spin. Now, the effects of the first films, while they have their own uncanny valleys or probably their own dated effects, I still feel that they were imaginative enough. I feel like they were very groundbreaking, very slow but tasteful in the same time. You feel like everything that you saw on those films have a meaning, have a purpose, and have a hit in this case. But in this movie, I don't know, for whatever reason, either they feel watered down, too repeated enough to repeat it, or I don't know, just not as imaginative. The fun of the first Matrix is that they felt like an anime. You felt the punches, you felt the bullets, you felt everything. The action was very high. But in this case, it feels watered down. In spite of all the cool visuals that they tried to do in this film, they were trying too hard, or they weren't trying enough. I'm not sure what they were trying, but it doesn't feel as memorable as the other ones. A fun fact, Tom Hardy was in one of those scenes, but he was cut out of the final cut because he was doing Venom Let There Be Carnage in San Francisco, which is also where the Matrix Resurrections were. But that's besides the point. But yeah, the production, the effects, and the action sequences, well, good. They don't feel as, as memorable as the other ones. And that's sad because I think there was a lot of good things, and there was a lot of great production, and there was a lot of good effects. But they felt like every other effect that we have seen in other 100 movies that we haven't seen from Marvel, from Star Wars, from Warner Brothers itself. So the impact feels little less, and you don't feel like you have high emotions in this case. Now it's time to talk about what are my thoughts in this film. Now, I cannot speak for everyone, but I'll say this. The Matrix Resurrections left a lot of people confused, anger, or just feeling okay. You see, people didn't like this movie or felt that it was okay or just summer blockbuster, or in this case, a Christmas blockbuster flop or popcorn film. And the Matrix movies were more than that. They were more like action films with a lot of talk and philosophical discussions which we used for our own classes in high schools. But in this movie, it feels like it's trying to do a commentary in its own existence, which puts a lot of baggage onto it, and that creates a problem for a lot of people, as they are not sure why are they doing this. And that's a huge problem. I can tell you from my own experience that even though I think this movie has its good qualities, it doesn't hold a candle to the original one or even the sequels. Because even though whatever you thought about the sequels, they were at least memorable enough that you can talk about it. And they still have their philosophical discussions and good commentaries about the world and reality and how we perceive it with machines and everything. But in this case, it's more about meta humor, meta jokes, or meta, no, not meta jokes. But I feel in this case is more about commentary in its own existence, making meta commentaries, and repeat a lot of things that even though they're trying to justify in this case, they don't feel as memorable as it used to be. Which is sad because I love The Matrix. It was like an anime film without the necessary of being an anime, but it was memorable. And in this movie, I don't know. It didn't have an impact for me, and I don't think it left a lot of impact for a lot of people, other than anger and confusion. But that can only speak for myself. What do you guys think? Do you think it's bad? Or do you think it's good? Or do you think it's on somewhere in between? If you take the blue pill, you wake up in your bed believing what everyone else wants you to believe about the Matrix Resurrections. If you take the red pill, you will have your own opinions, good, bad, or controversial nonetheless. I know it's not an option, but if there is something that the Matrix movies offer us, is the power of choice. What do you believe? Your own opinions or everyone else's? The choice is yours. I'm Enrique, and I'll see you next time. Oh, and I always wanted to say this in a Matrix review. Machines!